welcome to church today. Come on. Man, aren't you so glad to be here today? It's a good day to be here, especially if you're joining us at our Middletown or Hockessin locations or joining us online. I love that we get a chance to be one church in many locations this weekend, and I'm so glad that I get a chance to be here with all of you. My name is Brad. I am one of the pastors here, and I have been a part of the journey since 2013, on staff as one of the pastors for several years, and I first started serving with my wife in Journey students, and so shameless plug. I mean, I just got to do this, that this coming Tuesday is our monthly event for students that we call Converge, and it's happening this Tuesday, October 1st, right here at our Newark location. It's an incredible night where we get a chance to help middle school and high school students find Jesus. There's gonna be an after party complete with karaoke and waffles, everybody. So make sure you follow us on our Instagram page or check out the Journey Facebook page. We'll make sure that we'll keep you up to speed and make plans to be here. If you're a student or if you're the parent of a middle school or high school student, you're gonna wanna bring them to be a part of Converge. I'm also very thankful to Pastor Mark and Susie for giving me the chance to be up here today. As some of you know, Susie underwent surgery this week on her back, and Pastor Mark and Susie wanted me to share with you that surgery was successful, although there were some complications. So please continue to be praying for them and their family as Susie recovers. Would love to come alongside of them as a church family and just be united in prayer with them. But as for this weekend and as for today, we are wrapping up a series that we've been in called I Wish I Knew. And it's all about these cliches or sayings that our parents told us that, quite honestly, on the surface seemed a little bit frustrating or even annoyed us a little bit, but they all have a little bit of truth to them. And we're gonna be exploring some of these, or we have explored some of these sayings like, watch your mouth, or because I said so, or if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you? Some things like, stop it, you're fine. Or today, the final saying we're going to look at is, money doesn't grow on trees. Money doesn't grow on trees. Now, that's something that I heard whenever I grew up. In fact, I grew up in a family where money was talked about a lot, and so I'm so thankful that my family taught me a lot about money. In fact, it's probably the number one thing that my dad taught me when I was growing up. He taught me that money doesn't grow on trees, but thankfully it does grow in savings accounts, and it grows whenever you spend a little bit less than you make. But how many of you really wish that there was a such thing as a money tree, right? Don't you just wish that there was a money tree? Like, you could go to the garden center at Lowe's and pick out a tree, you could plant it in your backyard, and every single leaf was a $100 bill. Come on, how many of you know that's a good day? Just be like, it's this time of year, and you're like, rake it in, baby, here we go. You're just raking up $100 bills. You and your wife want to have a date night, and so you go, honey, do you want to go out tonight? Sure, honey, I'll walk right out back, pick a couple hundos off the tree. Let's go get something nice to eat. We all wish we had a money tree. And yet, even though I don't have a money tree, and I wish that I did, and even though I learned a lot of the practical tips and tricks from my family and from my dad about money, I still find myself thinking about it a lot. I quite honestly find myself stressing about it a lot. Would anybody just be honest in church and admit at all of our locations that you've had at least one point in the last month where you have stressed about money? Anybody, anybody, anybody? I've had those moments. Maybe you don't make as much as you want to, or maybe there's a big unexpected expense that you are facing, or let's face it, you go to the grocery store and you go to buy the chips for your J group this week, and they are now $7 a bag. Like, what is wrong with the world that Tostitos are $7 a bag? Most of us feel the stress with money pretty consistently. In fact, I read something this week that said that 65% of Americans say that money is the thing that stresses them out the most. Fascinating to me that it's the single most stressful thing in our lives. And can we all just agree that we don't want to be stressed about money? Like, can we just agree that we don't want to live in this place of anxiety or worry or feeling like we don't have enough? But quite honestly, it's hard to see the path towards living a more fulfilling life or a content life when we're just so bogged down by all of our anxieties about how much or how little is in our bank account. Well, what if there was some truth behind the saying, money doesn't grow on trees? That if we could plant it in our hearts, it could actually pay us off a lot more than in $100 bills that used to be leaves, but it could pay us off in peace and contentment and security and hope. What if it could pay off more than a money tree ever could? And so Jesus, he talked a lot about money because I believe he knew the potential that money would have in our lives to derail our lives and quite honestly, derail our faith. And I think he brought it up as examples because he knew that it would be helpful if he could talk about it directly. And so today we're gonna look at a story that Jesus shares with his closest followers, the people that he was closest friends with. And when we believe and apply what Jesus is saying, I really believe strongly that we can eliminate that kind of anxiety and worry in our lives when it comes to money. And so as Jesus tells this story, there were other people listening in, which it was intended for his disciples as closest friends, but there were also some people that were not fans of Jesus. And maybe you find yourself there where you wouldn't consider yourself a follower of Jesus or even a friend of his. And so you're just wondering, man, what is this all about? I picked the wrong week to come to church. Dude's talking about money. I promise you, I'm so glad that you are here and I'm glad that you're a part of these gatherings. And what I want you to know is that I think there's part of this message that every single one of us, regardless of what we believe about God or what our past is or how much is in our bank account, I think we can all get on the same page with. And then I think there's also something that Jesus says that every single one of us, again, regardless of where we come from or what we believe about God, it's gonna feel like a hard left to us. And so I want us to listen in and let's read this story together. Here's what Jesus says. There was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. Think of this guy as like a Jeff Bezos kind of guy, everybody. One day, a report came that the manager was wasting his employer's money. So the employer called him in and said, "What's this I hear about you? Get your report in order because you are going to be fired." Now, right on the front end of the message today, I have something that I have to admit to everybody publicly that I have a guilty habit. And that guilty habit is, anytime I go out to dinner with somebody and they tell me they're paying, I've been known to splurge a little. You know you do it too. I've been known to splurge a little. Come on, you know you do it. That whenever someone says, "Don't worry, it's on me tonight," you're like, "Let's go. How about an appetizer? Honey, you need dessert? You look famished. You should really," yeah, I mean, I would hate to be rude. It's my guilty habit. And the manager in this story, he's been spending a lot of time taking advantage of the boss because he knows he's rich. He's spent a lot of time ordering some extra appetizers and some extra desserts that weren't supposed to be on the company tab, if you know what I mean. And so the report comes in and this guy's been wasting the boss's money. And so the boss says, "Get everything in order. You are about to be fired." And the manager thought to himself, "Now what? My boss has fired me. I don't have the strength to dig ditches and I'm too proud to beg. I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who will give me a home when I'm fired." So he invited each person who owed money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, "How much do you owe him?" The man replied, "I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil." So the manager told him, "Quick, take the bill, and I want you to change it to 400 gallons. "And how much do you owe my employer?" he asked the next man. "I owe him 1,000 bushels of wheat," was the reply. Here, the manager said, "Take the bill and change it to 800 bushels. Now, how many of you know the manager is cooking the books? He's cooking the books. He is cheating his boss out of money, sticking it to his boss, lying to other people so that he can protect himself. And the manager recognizes that if he can make other people happy temporarily, it'll set him up so that whenever he gets fired from this job, he won't have any trouble finding a new one because he's got a bunch of friends now. And so basically, the manager is using his present situation, his present position to give him future success. He's using his present position to set up his future success. which quite honestly is one of the cornerstones of what people who, even if you don't believe in Jesus, say about money. You should take some of what your present position is and you should set it aside, you should save it, you should create an emergency fund, you should plan for retirement, you should do whatever so that it sets you up for future success. And so I think we can all agree that's probably some wise things to do. And so the manager, he's just trying to be practical. But remember, he's cheating the rich man out of what the rich man owns. He's already found ways to get crafty, and you would think that Jesus is about ready to call this guy out. You would think that Jesus is just about ready to let him have it because Jesus in the story represents the rich man, and he says, you would just think that he's about ready to call him out. But in reality, the rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd? What? How's that possible that the rich man would admire the guy who's been cheating him out of thousands of dollars? This doesn't make sense. But wait, the rich man didn't admire the manager's dishonesty. He was still gonna fire him. But he did admire the manager for being so shrewd, which that word I had to look up because I wanted to know what it meant. And when I looked it up, shrewd means that you are able to judge a situation accurately and turn it to your own advantage. You're able to judge a situation accurately and turn it to your own advantage. So, as I thought about it, what does it mean to be shrewd? Well, some of you have teenagers, and when a teenager knows just what to say to get you to give in, they're being shrewd. And some of you have known what it's like that you like somebody, but they're dating somebody else, so you just strategically place yourself in different environments so that they notice that you are the better option to whoever the other person was. Just a little bit of personal experience there. Haley, I love you. It worked. I was shrewd, everybody. That's what it looks like. And so the manager in the story, he's being shrewd. He's judging the situation accurately and turning it to his advantage. Then he takes all those debts that the boss is owed and changes them so that he gets favor from other people. And so Jesus says there's actually a lesson in this. Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. When I was a kid, I loved the checkout aisle at a grocery store because I knew I could get whatever piece of candy I wanted. My mom and dad would let me buy a piece of candy at the grocery store, and I could have a couple of dollars of my own in my pocket, and they'd say, you know what, go ahead, you can buy whatever you want. And so I'd get, a couple of pieces of candy or something like that, and I loved it. And my dad would get so frustrated. He'd get so upset and so annoyed because he knew that what he was trying to teach me was to use my money, and I was just busy wasting it on whatever piece of candy I wanted in the moment. And that's what I think most parents are trying to tell their kids. In fact, even if they aren't Christians, I think most parents are saying, hey, money doesn't grow on trees. So don't waste it on things that don't matter and aren't gonna be here tomorrow. Use it for something different. And that's what Jesus is telling us here. He's saying, use your money. Money's not meant to be loved or hated. Money's not meant to be feared or worshiped. That whether we have a lot, we have a little, we have just enough, we've got nearly too much, Jesus says, use it. That's what the rich man admired about his employee. He understood money, that it was a tool to be used. And so, what's that tool to be used for, Jesus? Well, thankfully, he tells us that the first thing that money is a tool to be used for is to benefit others. To make someone else's life a little bit better, to put a smile on someone's face, to meet a need. And so let me ask you today, in the midst of all the stress that you've been feeling about money recently, when was the last time that you used it to make a difference in somebody else's life? When was the last time that you used it to benefit somebody else? When was the last time you grabbed the check at dinner? Or when was the last time you bought somebody a little gift just because you saw it and you thought of them whenever you did so? When was the last time that you gave generously, or you gave not just out of obligation or, I have to, but you gave because you wanted it to make a difference and to help somebody and meet a need that wasn't your own? What would it look like if we lived the kind of life where we used our money as a tool to benefit others? The second thing Jesus says is that we should make friends to gain favor with other people as a result of generosity. And so let me be clear that money cannot buy friendships. That's not what Jesus is saying here, but he is saying that money can have an impact on your relationship, because while money can't buy friendships, money can buy the chips and salsa and guac and queso that you should bring to your J group this week. How many of you know that whenever you show up and all three of those things, there's the salsa, the queso, and the guac, you know it's a good day? So we use our resources to make friends, to do life together, to use our money in a way that helps someone else and it makes friends in the process, because that's what Jesus admired about the manager. Jesus wants us to use our present position to set up our future success. And then he says that then when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you into an eternal home. What? This is the hard left that I was thinking of. Because I'm like, Jesus, are you telling me my TV and my iPhone are gonna welcome me into heaven? This doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about, Jesus? What do you mean? I think what Jesus is saying is that whenever our possessions are gone, in other words, when we get fired from this world, I think we are all going to go to another place. There's another place we can go, and it's an eternal home that Jesus has planned for us in heaven, one that he's eagerly awaiting to give to us. And the condition in which we used our money in this life to benefit others and to make friends has a direct impact on the condition of our eternal lives whenever we get to heaven. There's a person who's been a part of our church for years here that she serves as a J-teamer. She comes in during the week and she's a receptionist for us. So she just loves being in the office. And her name's Miss Barb. And Miss Barb's been a part of our church for years, and many of you might know her, but Miss Barb is just a sweetheart. And she has one thing that she always does for people whenever they come into the office is there's something known as Miss Barb's snack stash. And if you know, you know. The Miss Barb's snack stash is not just like, a little cupboard with a couple of, expired boxes of cookies in it. Miss Barb's snack stash is cabinets full and a pull-out drawer of candy and cookies and goodies and crackers and pretzels and all this kind of stuff. Because over the years, Miss Barb, every time somebody comes into the office, goes, "Oh, what kind of snacks do you like?" And then Miss Barb buys them. And she buys them for you. And if you tell Miss Barb what kind of snack you like, not only will you get it that following Monday, but you will get it for the rest of eternity. But that's just who Miss Barb is. She's so generous. And Miss Barb, she's not rich, but she's generous and she finds ways to take care of people. In fact, we've got this kind of running joke around the office that when Miss Barb gets to heaven, she's gonna have this gigantic mansion waiting for her, and we're all just gonna be lucky to be in her shed. But what if it's true? What if it's true? What if it's true that Miss Barb uses her worldly resources to benefit others and to make friends? And that's the thing that welcomes her into an eternal home. What if it's true that whenever she gets welcomed into that eternal home, Jesus says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant"? I think that what Jesus is saying is that how we manage our money has a direct impact on what our eternity will be like. That people who don't believe in Jesus say, "I should save and spend less than I make because that's wise and I want to have a comfortable future." And that's true in this world. But people who do believe in Jesus say, "That's not the only thing that I'm doing. I'm going to invest in the appropriate places. I'm going to put my money and use my money so that whenever I'm dead and gone, I will know that it made a difference." And that's the different perspective that gets shared. In other words, here's how I thought about it, that money doesn't grow on trees, no matter how much we want it to. Instead, money grows our eternity. There's a long game to our money that's longer than even the best experts in this world can determine. There's more to it. And I believe Jesus has a financial future for us. So what if we learn to be shrewd and ask the question, is my money creating the eternal future I want? Or is it just giving me temporary contentment or happiness? How can I use my present position to set up my future success? What if we decided together that we were gonna stop going further and further into debt to pay for things that only provided temporary happiness? What if we decided together that we were gonna make and create a budget and then we were gonna stick to it because we knew the discipline of that was gonna show us how much we have and don't have so that it could help us make decisions, and ultimately just the knowing of those things can help avoid a lot of the anxiety that we face? What if we decided that we were going to give our first consistently instead of giving sporadically? What if that question, is my money creating the eternal future I want, becomes a primary filter for us in the way that we see our money and the way that we see God? Even just this semester in J groups, we have a few groups that are available to you to help learn a little bit more about what it looks like to use our money in the ways that God designed for us, and we'd love for you to be a part of them. But maybe you're sitting there thinking, you know what, Brad? Makes perfect sense. You're right. I will do all of those things you just said, just as soon as I get the money to do it. Anybody else? Like, I'll change my habits when it comes to money just as soon as I get a little bit more. I've been there. And I think Jesus says, it's not exactly how it works. Because Jesus said, if you're faithful in little things, you'll be faithful in large ones. But if you're dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. He says, and if you're untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you're not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own? Jesus is basically saying, if you had more money, you'd probably act the exact same way that you do right now. Want to know how I know in a practical sense? Just look at every lottery winner and NFL player who ended up broke. If we're faithful with little things, we can be faithful with much, but if we're not faithful, we're gonna lose it all anyway. And we always think that more money is the solution to our financial problems, but in reality, Jesus was trying to help us see that the more we go deeper with him, that we'll start to see that it's more than just our bank accounts, it's more than just how we manage our worldly wealth and money now, but that God actually wants to entrust to us the riches of heaven. He wants to pour out a blessing so great that we cannot contain it, but he wants us to have the right heart and the right perspective first. This message at its heart, at its core, is not a message about money. This message at its core is about where our heart is knit to God's. And that's what he's after. Because here on earth, what Jesus says is that no one can serve two masters. For you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. No one can serve two masters. You'll either love one and hate the other. So if you make your life all about money, eventually, when your money goes wrong, you'll start to get mad at God. Why? Because he's messing with your master. Because you've made money your master, and Jesus says, if you're devoted to one, you'll despise the other. If you're devoted to your money, you'll start to get mad at God for not giving you enough, or making you feel guilty for not giving enough whenever you feel like, oh, I should do that thing. But if you're devoted to God, you'll start to despise money. Not that you have to take all of your possessions and sell them to give to the poor or something like that. But you'll start to despise the way that money takes its hold on you, and the way that money starts to take a grip in your life, and it tries to become master over you. That whenever you love God and are devoted to him, all of a sudden you can live in a place that is free, financially free. I can step into all that God has for me because I'm not clinging to this thing hoping I can get just a little bit more. And that's what God desired and intended. That we'd be able to put our head down on the pillow at the end of the day knowing that God's a rich man who desires to keep our lives in the palm of his hands, to provide for us more than we could ever know, that he's the source of all things, And he wants to know that we can be entrusted to manage what he's given us well, that we'll be able to give generously and sacrificially and know that he's gonna return to us everything we need and more. And we can trust him with our lives. We need to remember today that money doesn't grow on trees. Money grows our eternity. So, how can I use my present position financially to set up my future success spiritually? Because, are you using your money? Are you using it to benefit others and to make friends? Or are you using it for yourself? Because there's an eternal home that's waiting. And so the Bible says that at the end of our lives, we will all have to give an account to God. It says that we'll all kind of report to Jesus. And ever since I was a kid and I heard that for the first time, I got this immediate kind of picture that was in my mind that one day I'm gonna get to heaven and he's gonna bust out two different lists of things. And this is just my visual, this is how I imagine it, but Jesus is going to break out a list of all the things that I've done right. He's gonna break out a list of all the things I've done wrong. And how many of you know that second list is not gonna be enjoyable? I'm gonna have to review all of those things, all the mistakes I've made, and thank God that through my faith in Jesus and his forgiveness of my sins, I can know that every single one of those things that I've done wrong, it's forgiven and paid for. Thank God. And so, I also imagine that as part of this kind of debrief of my life, so to speak, Jesus is gonna wheel out a file cabinet, and on the front of the file cabinet, it's just gonna say money. And it's gonna be all the things that I've done right and all the things I've done wrong when it comes to money. And this is just for me. But I just imagine that he brings this out and he's gonna say, okay, Brad, let's take a look at all the things you did with the money I gave you and let's see what you did with it. And those times that I wasted other people's money buying an appetizer and a dessert, sorry, Jesus. Those times that I bought something to prove something to myself or to someone else because I liked how it would make me look. I didn't want somebody to know that I was struggling. I wanted to have a status symbol. Sorry, Jesus. Maybe the times that all that time I spent stressing, wondering, am I gonna be okay? Is everything gonna be fine? Is my family gonna be okay? Am I gonna be able to provide for them? Am I gonna be able to take care of them for the rest of my life? Are my kids gonna be set up? How am I gonna pay for my kids' college? And how am I gonna make sure, I've got a daughter, she's gonna need to get married someday, and holy cow, that wedding's gonna be 400 grand. I've got no idea how this is. All that time I spent wondering. I think Jesus is just gonna go, Brad, what were you so worried about? I gave you everything you have already. In one place in the scriptures, Jesus says, look at the birds in the sky. Look at the lilies in the field. Aren't they clothed more beautifully? And aren't they even just here temporarily, but God cares for them even more. God cares for you more than even them. He's gonna take care of you. And then I imagine that while Jesus is pulling out this file cabinet, he's gonna say, hey, Brad, you remember that message you gave at the Journey? And again, this is just from me. But I think he's gonna ask me, did you use your resources or did you hoard them? Were you a giver or were you a guarder? Did you wait until you were emotionally moved to give? Or did you give out of obedience to me because I instructed you to as an act of trust? When you used your resources, did you benefit others or did you benefit yourself? I think Jesus will ask me, did you find moments to be generous with people even though they didn't deserve it? Did you keep your eyes open for people that are hurting and that need help, that are hungry, and did you help them? I think Jesus will ask me, did you use your money to make friends? Were there some other people in your life that were going the same direction you were, that they were down on their luck or they were struggling, and you used what I gave you to make a difference in their life? I gave you an opportunity to be generous. Did you pay for that thing for them? Did you take care of them? Did you provide for them? Did you come alongside of them? Did you encourage them? I think Jesus will make me answer those questions, and I hope one day I can stand before Jesus, that I won't get it right every step of the way, but I sure hope that I can stand before Jesus one day saying, I learned my lesson. I'm gonna use my resources to benefit others and to make friends. I'm gonna resist the urge that this world tells me I need to accumulate. I'm going to resist the urge that tells me I don't have enough and that God won't provide for me. I'm going to resist the urge to say that I'm in charge of all things financially and I can figure it all out in my own power, and I'm gonna rely on the only God who is capable of holding it in his hands. And I'm gonna trust him in a new way, because I'm in the process of learning that money doesn't grow on trees, that money grows our eternity. So whether you're here today and you've got a lot or you've got nothing, I promise you, God wants to use the season that you're in to help you see how you can use the resources that he's given you, as much or as little as they might be, to trust him with them, to put him first with them, to get the right resources and practical things, but eventually to set up our eternal home. And so if you're here today and you'd say, you know what, I need to get better at that. And this fall, I'm believing God for a breakthrough. I'm believing God and trusting him with my money. And I wonder all over this place, if you just raise your hand, let me pray for you. Let me pray over you and your life. Pray over your household. Come on, would you open up your hearts big to God with me? Jesus, we come to you today and we're so thankful. God, we're so grateful for all that you've given us. You are the source of all things. You gave us our jobs. You gave us the gifts and talents we have to get them. You gave us the paycheck. So God, right now, whatever our bank account looks like, we trust you. We thank you for what you've given us. God, I pray that you would help us use our resources, not waste them, not stress about them all the time, but use them. God, I pray that we would use them to benefit others. Give us moments this fall where we see opportunities to be generous, where we see opportunities to make somebody else's life just a little bit better. God, I pray that you would help us use our resources to make friends. I pray that there would be some people in our lives that we can't buy their friendship and we don't want to buy their friendship, God. But we desire, through your nudge of telling us to be generous, God, that would bring that friendship closer together. Change our hearts, God, so that we may see you more. And the moment we get to heaven, you say, well done, my good and faithful servant. We desire it today, God. We pray it boldly in the name of Jesus. And why don't you just let God speak to your heart for a moment more? Money was not the only thing that was meant for eternity. You were. You were meant for eternity. That you were meant to have a relationship with God. And Jesus, he saw all the little mistakes that we've all made, all the ways we've fallen short of God's standard, or all the ways we've messed up. And he said, you know what, I'm gonna come to the earth, I'm gonna die on a cross, and I'm gonna rise again as a payment for those mistakes. That then what God's word says is that if we believe in our heart that Jesus is Lord, and if we confess with our mouth and declare it publicly to other people, then we will be saved. So maybe you're here today and you don't know where your eternal home is yet. It'd be my joy and my privilege to lead you in a very simple prayer where Jesus can welcome you into that eternal home, into that family. So one more time, why don't you open up your hearts big to God? And if that's you, you're ready to put your faith in Jesus for the first time today, for real, then I wonder all over this place, just pray something like this with me at all of our locations. Just say, Jesus, I believe in you today. I'm trusting you with my life. I've made so many mistakes. Would you forgive me for them? Help me turn my life to you as my number one priority. I'm trusting you with my life. And if that's you, you just prayed that prayer for the very first time while everybody's still focused on God. I wonder, at all of our locations, would you be bold and raise your hand? Say, I put my faith in Jesus today. It's amazing. It's amazing, nice and high. It's incredible. And then journey together. Come on, can we celebrate all the people who put their faith in Jesus today? Come on, isn't that incredible? Thank God. Thank God.